It 48-47 and middleweight champion
of sportsmanship by Khamzat.
Come on. Hey, I just want to fucking hard. I'll admit it. Fucking example, but I try to sell these fights for you fuckers.
Now,
that motherfucker would not go back.
middleweight title fights I've ever seen in my life because
he may have broke my nose, but again, my Christian fan fucking dream. Thank you.
Sean, they live the world.
He walked into that arena unbeaten, unbothered, untouchable. A man who had chewed through every opponent the UFC threw at him and spat them out before the crowd had even settled into their seats. Khamzat Chimaev was not just the middleweight champion. He was a statement, a warning, a fighter who made other fighters quietly reconsider their career choices. And then Sean Strickland happened. Newark was electric that night. UFC 328 had the kind of atmosphere that makes the hairs on your arms stand up before a single punch is thrown. The stakes were enormous. Chimaev had come into fight week as the heavy favorite, and that was not a media narrative. That was the betting markets, the analysts, the people who study this sport for a living, all pointing in the same direction. Add to that the reports leaking out of the training camps suggesting Chimaev had been putting Strickland through the grinder in sparring, and suddenly this felt less like a title fight and more like a formality. A very expensive, very loud formality. Strickland, though, had never read that script. He never does. The man fights the way he talks, relentlessly, without apology, with a kind of stubborn belief in himself that borders on the irrational. And sometimes in this sport, irrational belief is exactly the weapon you need. The first round went much the way the majority expected. Chimaev was controlled, physical, precise. He was imposing his game, setting the tone, reminding everyone in that building and watching around the world exactly why he held that belt. Strickland was in the fight, but Chimaev looked like a man executing a plan. Then came the second round. Nobody outside of the octagon knows exactly what shifted in those minutes. There was a moment, unclear from the outside, undisclosed to the public, where something changed in Chimaev's rhythm. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but for a fighter as experienced as Strickland, subtle is enough. Strickland has built his entire career on reading those small cracks in an opponent's composure, and then pushing through them until they become chasms. The moment he found his range, the entire complexion of the fight changed. From the second round onwards, it was a different contest entirely. Strickland grew into those exchanges the way he always does. Not with flashy moments or highlight reel sequences, but with volume, pressure, and the quiet confidence of a man who believes he can outlast you mentally and physically. Round by round, he chipped away. Round by round, the scorecards became less predictable. By the championship rounds, this was a genuine contest with a genuine outcome nobody could call with certainty. 25 minutes. That is how long these two men went at each other. 5 hard, ugly, competitive rounds in front of a crowd that had come expecting dominance and instead got something far more compelling, a real fight. And when the final bell rang and both men stood there breathing heavy in the middle of that octagon, there was something unexpected waiting for them. Respect. These two had not exactly been cordial leading into fight week. The build-up had been charged, intense, occasionally hostile in the way that only fights between genuinely disliked opponents can be. But inside the octagon, something else emerged. They touched gloves during the fight, not once, but multiple times. And when it was over, when the final horn had sounded and the result was about to be decided, they did it again. Chimaev accepted what was coming. No protest, no excuse, just a nod to a man who had earned what he came for. The judges scored it a split decision for Sean Strickland. New middleweight champion. Khamzat Chimaev's unbeaten reign was over. The dressing room was quiet. The social media notifications were not. Within hours, the internet had already broken down every round, every exchange.
I will never be like my idol Khabib. I am just a Timo version of Khabib. I lose to this soft guy, Sean, who throw jabs all fight. My shitty wrestling finally got exposed. Everybody know I am crushed.
Every moment that may have tilted the fight. But Chimaev himself said nothing until he did. And when he finally spoke, he did not need many words to make his point. He went on to X, found Strickland's tag, and posted 4 words alongside a salute. "See you soon again." That was it. No lengthy statement, no explanation, no detailed breakdown of what went wrong or a public audition for sympathy. Just 4 words carrying the unmistakable weight of a man who has not finished his business. The MMA world reacted instantly. Those 4 words ignited rematch speculation almost immediately because they were not vague. They were a promise. A quiet, controlled, pointed promise from a man who has never needed volume to make himself heard. Chimaev had spoken softly, but the message landed hard. However, the road back to Strickland is not a straight one. UFC President Dana White, speaking after the event, introduced a significant complication into the picture. Chimaev had encountered issues during his weigh-in, the details of which are still being discussed, and White suggested those issues may have consequences for where Chimaev competes next. Specifically, the possibility of a move up to light heavyweight has been raised. A new division, a new challenge, a different path entirely. What that means for the rematch is genuinely unclear. The desire is obviously there from Chimaev's side. Nobody sends a forward public message to their rival without meaning it. But desire and timing are 2 different things in this sport, and the UFC controls that timeline more than any fighter does. If White decides Chimaev belongs at light heavyweight for now, the middleweight rematch gets complicated, perhaps delayed, perhaps shelved altogether, depending on how the division moves. So what does that leave us? It leaves us with a new champion in Sean Strickland, who once again proved that the version of him people underestimate is the version they should fear most. It leaves us with a former champion in Khamzat Chimaev, who, despite the loss, demonstrated in defeat why he remains one of the most dangerous fighters on the entire roster. And it leaves us with 4 words hanging over the middleweight division like a storm cloud that has not yet decided when it wants to break. See you soon again. Whether soon means next year or a division away, one thing about this rivalry feels certain: it is not finished. And honestly, this sport is better for it.